Hello students and my dear friends, myself HR Chaudhary, working as assistant professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering College, Ajmer. Today we will have a lecture on scenario testing. As already we have done lectures on different topics, now today we will have a lecture on scenario testing. So we start from scenario testing. Is what is the scenario testing? So we can say the scenario testing is a software testing technique that makes best uses of scenarios. If scenarios help a complex system to test better, where in the scenarios are to be credible, which are easy to evaluate. If we talk about the scenario testing, is a software testing activity that uses scenarios, hypothetical stories to help the tester work through a complex problem or a test system. Scenario testing is an ideal scenario test is a credible, complex, compelling, or the motivating story, the outcome of which is easy to evaluate. These tests are usually different from test cases. In the test cases are in a single step, where a scenario covers a number of steps. If we talk about scenario testing, so there are certain methods to implement the scenario testing. If we talk, the number one is system scenario and the number two is use case and role based scenario. So if you talk about system scenario, so we can say in this method only those sets of realistic user activities that cover several components in the system are used as a scenario test. The development of system scenario can be done using definitely by storylines, by statement transitions, or using business verticals, or it can be done by the implementation story from customers. So these are the ways through which we can implement the system scenario. Now if we talk about the use case or role based scenario, in this method the focus is on how a user uses the system with different roles or environments. So in this method we see that how a user different users which having a different roles can use the system, and we can test the system under different kind of environments. Now we move to the next. We have a certain kind of questions before moving to the next. Why create the test scenarios, when not create test scenarios, and how to write the test scenarios. So we start from the why create test scenarios. Why we know definitely as a test scenario as a defined or as any functionality that can be tested. It is also called, as it is also called test conditions or test probability. Now we will see that why create the test scenarios and what will be the benefit by creating the test scenarios. So we should create the test scenarios because we have the certain reasons. So what are the reasons? Number one, we can say creating test scenarios ensures a complete test coverage. Or next we can say test scenarios can be approved by various stakeholders like business analysts, developers, customers, to ensure the application under test is thoroughly tested. It ensures that the software is working for the most common use cases. The tests is test scenarios create because they serve as a quick tool to determine the testing work effort, and according create a proposal for the client or the organize the workforce. They help determine the most important end-to-end transactions or the real use of software applications. Or we can say other thing, for studying the end-to-end functionality of a program, test scenario is critical. So that's why we need to create the test scenarios. Now when not create test scenarios, so there are certain things where we should not create the test scenarios. The number one is the application under test is complicated. If the application is complicated or unstable, or there is a time crunch in the project. So if there is a complicated application, there is some stability is not there, or there is a time crunch, so that's why we should not create that time. The project that follow agile methodology like Scrum and other things, so that time we should not create the test scenario. And the test scenario may not be created for a new bug fix, or we can say regression testing. In such cases, the test scenario must be already heavily documented in the previous test cycles. So that's why in that case we cannot create the test scenario. Now if we want to know that how to write the test scenarios in a best way, so we have the certain steps, or we can say there are number of steps are there through which we can write the test scenarios. So we can start from the number one, step one. Read the requirement documents like BRS, SRS and FRS of the system under test. Then we could also refer use case and books, manuals and other kind of things, application to be tested. In step 2, we see that for each requirement, figure out possible user actions and the objectives, determine the technical aspects of the requirement, certain possible scenarios of the system, abuse and evaluate users with hacker mindset. Now step 3, after reading the requirement document and doing your due analysis, list out different test scenarios that verify each feature of the software. Now we move to the step 4 to write the scenario. Once you have listed all possible test scenarios, a traceability matrix is created to verify that each and every requirement has a corresponding test scenario. Definitely, if you talk about step 5, the scenario created are reviewed by your supervisor, or later they are also reviewed by other stakeholder in the project. So these are the things through which we can, or steps through which we can write the test scenarios. We have a certain kind of tips, or we can say the things through which we can write beneficial or in a good test scenarios. So we must follow each test scenario should be tied to a minimum of one requirement or user story as per the project methodology. Before creating a test scenario that verify multiple requirements at once, ensure you have a test scenario that checks that requirement is isolation. Avoid creating overly complicated test scenarios spanning multiple requirements. The number of scenarios may be large and it is expensive to run them all based on customer priorities. Only run selected test scenarios. So these are the things through which we can write the test scenarios, and there are certain things through which we can design a good number of test cases. Now we can see in this diagram where we have the scenarios, those are assigned to the use case which are associated with the persona. These scenarios are derived from the test cases, and this persona is derived from the evolution point. So from this diagram we can understand very well, so that how we can create the test scenario and we can use those kind of test cases for the test scenarios. Now we have an example for scenario testing, the test scenario for e-commerce application, how we can design the test scenario. So we can design a number of test scenarios. We'll see here only two test scenarios. Suppose test scenario 1 is here, check the login functionality. So you can see in the figure that there is a login page is there. Now we want to check the login functionality. So how you can design the test scenario and what kind of test cases you can design for this thing. So number of test cases can be designed for the given test scenario. So what number of test cases may be there? There may be the check system behavior, one valid email ID from you can see here the two things are there. One is email ID, another is password. So when valid email ID and the password is entered, Second case may be there, check system behavior when invalid email ID and valid password is entered. Third case may be there, check system behavior when valid email ID and invalid password is entered. The fourth case may be there, check system behavior when invalid email ID and invalid password is entered. Fifth case may be there, check the system behavior when email ID and password are left blank and sign in entered. The sixth case may be there, check forgot your password is working as expected. The seventh case may be there, check system behavior when valid and invalid phone numbers and the password is entered. And the last and eighth case may be there, check system behavior when keep me signed is checked. So in all conditions, for this login functionality, we can design these number of test cases, and we can create a test scenario where we can check out and we can look at the expected outcome. And now the second test scenario may be there, like check the order history. So we have the page for order history, and now we can design the number of test cases as we done already in the earlier example. So we can design number of test cases and we can check out whether it is working properly or not. Now the other, suppose we have done only two scenarios here. Other test scenarios may be like this: check home page behavior for returning customers, check category and product pages, check customer services and contact pages, check daily deals and pages. So for all these pages, definitely we can design, for all these scenarios we can design number of test cases and we can check out. So here is the we are done about the scenario testing and the different types of scenario testing and the different examples here. Thank you.